I am about to play some audio of me talking that I did not intend to share. This was a private message that I left for my friend. And you'll hear that. You'll hear that with the stuff that's bleeped out. And this definitely wasn't for public consumption. But I was thinking about it as I thought about the topic of this episode, which is how much we can get into comparison spirals. And I was just going to talk about the subject, but then I just kind of felt inspired. I thought, why don't I let my good podcast friends hear what a real raw comparison spiral sounds like in my world. And so I was leaving a message for my friend Leah Darrow, and it was just a couple days ago, as of this recording, it was a couple days ago. I was on my way home from someone else's stand-up comedy show, and it really triggered a massive comparison spiral. And Leah and I have this thing where when we are feeling like we are in one of those spirals, we articulate all of our limiting beliefs that have come from this. And it's, okay, this is actually a really helpful practice when you're feeling down on yourself. This is similar to journal speak. It's like verbal journal speak, where you codify exactly what are those limiting beliefs saying. Because what can happen is you're feeling bad, you're feeling down, you're feeling inferior, but all of these feelings are kind of amorphous. They're not, you haven't articulated exactly what they are. And when you put them into words, not just thoughts in your head, but either words on paper or words spoken to a friend, or if you don't have any friends, I mean, I've been in those seasons, or if it's like too private, it's like, my level of crazy is maybe no one's ready to hear it. That's what Notes app is for. You get it out verbally and then just delete it. I know it doesn't sound like that would make that much of a difference. So many people would say that, I don't know. I mean, I've thought about it. I know what's bothering me. No, you really don't until you speak the words. I was going to play the audio right now, but may I go on a surprise Catholic ghetto tangent?
Oh,
may I hit the sound effect for it? I didn't mean to get this Catholic ghetto this early in the podcast. This podcast is open to people of all faith traditions. Just because my faith is the right one, doesn't mean that you guys aren't welcome to listen. Because this wisdom is, everyone wants it. Caitlin's not Catholic. Listen, this is a it's an open-minded podcast. But may I just say that one of the things this reminds me of is the Catholic concept of confession, coming to faith from lifelong atheism. I did understand the concept of, you gotta confess your sins. I've been a horrible human being, and I have to be accountable to God for this. And I had heard the Protestant idea that, you can just kind of think it. Just think some thoughts like, oh, I'm so bad, and send those thoughts God's way. And I thought, okay, all right. I think that I'm tracking with the Protestants on that one. That one I do see. Then I actually went to confession, and let me just tell you, putting your sins into actual real words that will fall on someone else's ears, that's a whole different ballgame. You're like, oh, I thought I knew what a horrible person I was, but like hearing myself actually say this is insane. It's not even the same. It's a night and day difference. It is not even close to being the same thing as kind of thinking in God's general direction about what you've done wrong. And, and the idea in Catholicism is that the priest stands in the place of Jesus. He's a representation. So you're not confessing to the priest, you're confessing to Jesus, and the priest is like the conduit. And then also the response when you hear the priest speaking on behalf of Jesus. He's not saying this with his own power, but he's like, listen, Jesus wanted you to know, he's like, listen, my child, you are forgiven. It's like, wow, to actually hear that, to have it fall on your ears and not just be like, yeah, I bet God probably forgives me, just kind of out in the ether somewhere, I mean, it's insane. So that is why, okay, this is a Catholic ghetto tangent of what was already a tangent, but I do remember where we're going, and I'm going to play this audio. That was my first lesson in really the same principle that is behind Journal Speak, that is behind me and Leah Darrow laying out our limiting beliefs when we're stuck in a comparison spiral. It's that it changes everything when you put it into words, whether it's words on a page or words spoken. It just changes everything when you put it into words. And God is just full of good ideas with confession. When I was like, this is the religion. This is right, because this just makes so much sense when I first actually experienced it. Okay, hit the end Catholic ghetto tangent sound effect. So Leah and I do this, and what had happened was on this past Thursday, Ellen Skrmetti had a show in Austin at Cap City, which is my home club. And so she was going to be there. I was very excited to see her. You need to follow her on social media. It's, at least on Instagram, she is just Skrmetti. It's, let's see, just SKR. Just type in that. She'll come up. Ellen Skrmetti. And she does, you guys might have seen her. She does the Hey Jesus sketches where she's like, hey Jesus, it's me. Listen, her content is just delightful. In fact, you know what? We have a clip of her Hey Jesus, it's me sketches. I'm sure you have seen these. They're so funny. So, okay, play one of Ellen Skrmetti's little sketches here.
Jesus, it's me. Listen, I know we are supposed to count it all joy, but hear me out. My daughter is, okay, it's joy. Okay, but did you hear what that's joy. Okay. She told me the other, count it all joy. Okay. She is a blessing. Yes, I know. Yes. For this child, I have prayed. Social pet. Okay. Okay. Wait, where does she go?
She is so good. She's insanely talented. And her Instagram handle is just Skrmetti, SKRMETTI. And I think that is her handle on other platforms as well. So she was in town and we're buds. And so I went down to Cap City to see her do stand up. And I was very interested in that because I didn't know what her background was in terms of stand up. And there are some people who focus more on sketches than stand up. And stand up is honestly, it's not their thing. And they tour as a way to just kind of hang out with their crowds. And then other people take stand-up very seriously. And I just didn't know Ellen's background. I didn't know that she actually, stand-up comedy was her first love and she's very good at it. So I just went to say, hey, I know I'll have fun either way because she's awesome. And wow, she crushed it. She destroyed. She was so good. And in the green room beforehand, we were talking a little bit about some business deals she had made. And I was thinking, oh, yeah, boy, I should have done that. Oh, and I was like, really? You pushed back on that one venue? You told them that you reject that amount of expenses out of your cut? Really? I thought that we had to just be like, yes, sir, I'm honored to be working. What? And so at the end of this, it triggered a massive comparison spiral for me. And I decided to go ahead and pull the audio of the audio that I left for my friend Leah. And who, by the way, you need to know, she's a life coach and she is excellent. She has a brand new podcast, the Leah Darrow podcast. It's so good. And she's such a good life coach. And so I knew the look on her face, what it would be when I was telling her all this. But I went through my thing where I decided to lay out all of my limiting beliefs. Now, you will hear some language that is bleeped. You'll hear some language that is unbleeped in this. And if that is not your thing, if you choose to believe that Jen Fulwiler always speaks, with using only the finest language befitting of a Catholic, then you could, maybe pause it, skip ahead 15 minutes. We have rat beef news, so you can skip ahead to that. But guys, I will say, I didn't encounter God until I was in my 30s. Okay. We need to grade on the curve. All right. Because I had many years, adult years of being a militant atheist, and you learn to speak a certain way. And it's, I can't unlearn my mother tongue, guys. So judge me on the curve. Okay. It's, the spiritual life is a journey. All right. So let's play the audio. And I'm not kidding. I truly had a meltdown. I said all of this and more to Joe. I adore Ellen. I adore her. I have the highest respect for her. She sent me into an absolute comparison meltdown. Let's take a listen.
Like, as soon as she walks on stage, you know her accent. You know this person. Like, oh yeah, Baptist background for sure. Yep. Mississippi, Alabama. Yep, that's where she's from. Yeah, it's like you just know everything about her. I walk on stage. Who the hell am I? Nobody knows. What's she doing here? She's talking about being from Texas. She does not seem like she's from Texas. She has all these kids. She doesn't seem like somebody who would have a lot of kids. She says she's religious, but she doesn't have that vibe, that we associate with religious people. And she's talking about how she likes to make spreadsheets. No one, because as soon as Ellen walks on stage and starts making jokes, it's like, oh my gosh, I know that Southern mom. I know her. I know that Southern mom. Within 2 seconds. No one's ever been like, oh my gosh, I know that woman who has 6 kids and, loves to do spreadsheets, is really analytical. I know her. Aren't we all? That can totally relate. It's also relatable. No, nobody gives a about my comedy, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't care about my comedy. After seeing Ellen, I don't care about my comedy.
It went on. It went on. I would play you where it went from there, but it was too much bleeping to take out. So that is the main subject for today. What do we do when we are in a comparison spiral? In my case, my comparison issue was feeling like Ellen is just so much better set up for success than I am because she has such a clear public persona. She has such a clear brand. That is something I think about a lot. So that was my personal issue. But for you, maybe it might be something totally different. A buddy of mine on social media the other day was saying she's having some issues with secondary infertility. And so it seems like everyone she follows, of course, is now having babies. They're having triplets. As soon as she is, having these issues, if you're broke, it seems like everyone on social media is rich. So your issues might not be what mine are. They almost definitely are not. But nevertheless, we've all ended up in that comparison spiral. And that is the main topic. And as usual, in this show, we get to the main topic in the second half of the show. This is all set up. I like to jump in, set it up. Here's what we're talking about. So we will return to this subject in the second half of the show, where I will leave you saying, how is this podcast free? Because I actually did something that really helped me pull out of it. And that's what I'm going to share with you at the beginning of in our setup topics. I am going to share with you Ellen Skrmetti did one of the most iconic things I've ever seen anyone do. And that might be part of what triggered my comparison spiral. I was like, I'll never be that iconic. That's unbelievable. And we have rap beef news. So all very exciting stuff. Welcome to the Jen Fulwiler Show. This is the podcast where you learn the art of the village hustle. That's being a hot girl boss or hot boy boss who knows that love and family and community are the foundations of all true success. I will also teach you here how to be in your villain era and how to deal with it when your life is just one dumpster fire after another. Notice I'm still covering my face. I think instead of eye patch, I'm going with glasses. So today I'm wearing a black leather jacket with my bank robber face covering thing and then glasses. So I kind of look like, you know what I look like? I look like I am the accountant for a biker gang. Leave a comment on YouTube. Just search for Jen Fulwiler on YouTube. This is episode 242. So if you just search for Fulwiler 242 on YouTube, this should come up. And leave a comment. Tell me if I look like I am the accountant for a biker gang. I have been talking on my Patreon about what is going on with my face, and I show my face on Patreon, and you guys are so kind to lie to me about how it's getting better. And just this past weekend, we did a Patreon live event. Full disclosure, we're doing that right after we record this. So I don't know, who knows? It was magnificent. It was amazing. It was my best performance ever. But that replay will be available. You should be able to get instant access to it right now at patreon.com/thisisjen or patreon.com/IsisJen. And leave a comment and lie to me and be like, I think your face really is looking much better. It's not. But lie to me and tell me that. That's honestly the main use of my Patreon. But we have a bunch of good content that's not related to my meltdowns on there as well. But I think everyone likes the meltdown live content and the replays. And Caitlin usually joins us too for the lives. We have a bunch of kids running around. They are very chaotic and fun. And it's very easy to unsubscribe if at any point you decide that my Patreon is too much good content. It's just blowing your mind with the goodness. It's like 2 clicks and you can unsubscribe. So patreon.com/thisisjen. New episodes every Wednesday morning. And we are in Austin, Texas. And Caitlin White is our lovely producer. Okay. Okay, listen. You guys, before I get into... No, you know what? Okay, no. I'll start with the rat beef news because what Ellen did that was so iconic actually blends into the main topic. So that'll be another flawless transition here on this podcast. Okay, so Drake dropped a new album right after. Did you know this?
No.
Did you hear this? Okay, yes. So Drake. Okay, so first of all, if you heard episode, I think it was 240. Was it 240 or 241? Well, no, it's 241.
My days blend together.
Yeah. Okay, I think it was 240. Yeah. I think it was the previous episode.
Yeah.
Where you know what? Yeah, okay, yeah. Because in episode 241, I talked about how Kendrick Lamar did the most iconic thing anyone's ever done. And what I saw Ellen do that I'm going to tell you guys about in a minute is, I do have to say, it's the second most iconic thing anyone has ever done. If you missed that episode and the Super Bowl halftime show to review, I had been building this up for months saying, okay, so Jay-Z obviously doesn't like Drake or his crew, which is why he wouldn't let Lil Wayne, Lil Wayne is Mr. New Orleans. Obviously, I know you guys are like, duh, Jen, who wouldn't let Lil Wayne, who's publicly and specifically said he desired so much to be part of the New Orleans Super Bowl. Jay-Z snubbed him because Jay-Z doesn't like Drake and his crew, and Lil Wayne is part of that. And again, you guys are like, yes, obviously, I know. I mean, everyone comes to me for like street hip hop, urban content. I know. So Jay-Z, obviously, I think we don't really know what Jay-Z's issue is with Drake, but he obviously has one because he has big sway in who performs in the Super Bowl. And it didn't really make sense to give Kendrick Lamar a solo Super Bowl performance because his music is not that mainstream. And the only mainstream hit he had is where he lists every horrifying allegation against Drake. I mean, gets as personal as you can get. Just airs this man's dirty laundry. Just takes all the skeletons in the closet and just dumps them out for the whole world to see. And that's his only hit. So the question was, okay, he has to play his hit. And first of all, Jay-Z must really hate Drake to allow this to happen because there should have been like 4 other performers to balance out Kendrick. But evidently Jay-Z was like, no, we just want this to be the halftime show of hating Drake. So the halftime show started. I'll wrap this up quickly because it's just a summary. All right, so the halftime show started. I'm watching it I'm like, he can't. I don't even know if that's legal to dump out all of these horrifying allegations against Drake, which are his lyrics, like at the Super Bowl. You can't. And so he teased starting his They Not Like Us, the famous song, and he kept stopping it. And he specifically said, because they like to sue, calling out the fact that Drake is suing him. So embarrassing Drake in front of the whole country. And so then he starts They Not Like Us. And it did seem to be a watered down version. And I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, that makes sense. You know, you can't you can't use this Super Bowl stage to air out your beef with one guy. I mean, that wouldn't make sense. not only did he go into the Drake accusation lyrics, but he looked right at the camera when he did it. He'd been kind of passing by the camera, and then he turns and says, "Say, Drake," right at peering into that man's soul from the Super Bowl stage. Okay, so now everybody thought that Drake must now go into seclusion. I mean, you would have to go back to ye old times of Julius Caesar to see anyone have as great of a victory as Kendrick Lamar just had. I mean, calling out all of the horrible accusations about his enemy, using his enemy's name on stage. And that's like literally the whole Super Bowl halftime show. It was just, and having Drake's ex-girlfriend dance on stage, which was apropos of nothing. Like, why is Serena Williams there? Because she hates Drake too. I mean, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I thought, Drake has to retire. You just have to go away after that. But now he released a new album, and the streets are saying that it's actually pretty good. And I know everyone's like, when I want to know what the urban Black American streets are saying, I go to Jen Fulwiler, because no one is more tapped into that community than Jen is. So a lot of people are saying that it is actually really good. And I because I'm so dedicated to rap beef content on this podcast, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out if they are bots, if Drake's record label was just being like, this is fire, oh, this is Drake's back, this is fire, or not, because I didn't think it was that great. I listened to most of the album. I did not find them to be bops, as the kids would say. But I don't know. Maybe, I don't have Drake's background. I'm not Canadian. Maybe that's because he released it with some guy. It's like a bunch of words strung together. I forget his co-producer's name, but this guy's also Canadian. So it's a very Canadian, album. So maybe that's why it didn't resonate with me. But a lot of people seem to think that it's a good album, and the song that specifically addresses Kendrick is called "Gimme a Hug," which is kind of funny because that is very different energy than the angry energy that Kendrick has brought. And, I mean, Drake has also brought angry energy before in some of his rap beef songs, but so yeah, "Gimme a Hug." I mean, it was good. I just didn't think it was amazing. But what I want us to note is that there are certain performers who are worth studying even if you don't care about their music. It's one of the reasons I frequently bring up Taylor Swift. It doesn't matter if you like her as a person, if you like her music, if you like her appearances at the Chiefs games, or if you hate all that. It doesn't matter. She is worth studying as someone who doesn't let limiting beliefs get her down and who knows how to be prolific even under an enormous amount of pressure. And Drake is the same. And that is why one of the many reasons I find these rap beefs worth following is, I mean, how do you keep your head up? How do you tap into your creative side when your ego is being very much inflamed? Because, hit the hot fire tangent alert. This is good. This is actually really good. Because nothing blocks creative flow faster than ego. And I have spent most of my career around people who do creative work, whether it's radio shows, stand-up comedy, writers and comedians. They're tied for the worst about this. But same thing with artists, people who do mixed media, make jewelry, arrange flowers, whatever. When it comes time to actually put your work out there to be evaluated by the public, that's when your ego is going to get involved. And nothing will shut down an artist faster. I was actually talking to a comedian friend the other day who I said, your comedy is so good. You need to release a special. You need to release a special. But they're very stalled out on this. And I think it's ego. And I don't mean ego like this is a vain, prideful person. It's just that self-protective. I don't want to hear the hate comments. Maybe if I spend another year making this absolute perfection, I won't get any haters and everyone will love me. I mean, Ego is the enemy of creation because your ego is very, very protective, and your ego is constantly screaming at you, don't take any risks, don't put anything out there, and just do whatever it takes to get people to like you. Your ego is obsessed with getting people to like you because that's what makes it feel safe. And if you create anything and put anything out there, I mean, a lot of people aren't going to like it. And especially if you're household name famous, like Drake or Taylor Swift or Kendrick Lamar, someone like that. I think it's almost hard to imagine the ego pressure you would feel. If any of you guys have ever tried to share anything that was kind of more for public consumption, not just for your friends and family on social media, like give someone life tips or share a meaningful story that you hope kind of gets around that a lot of people see, that can be kind of terrifying because you're like, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people might see this and some of them won't like it. Now imagine that if it's like, if I drop any kind of new album, I will have millions of people saying that I suck, burning up Reddit and social media and talking about how horrible I am. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of pressure. And so that's one of the reasons I love following these rap beefs, because you're looking at people who are under a lot of ego pressure. They have been insulted. Their nemesis have been saying that they're bad at rap and they're not talented. And I mean, and Kendrick talking about Drake saying a whole lot more than that. And even Drake talking about Kendrick, talking about his manager is ripping him off and his manager is controlling his whole life and all that. And so how do you tap into your creative well in the face of that kind of pressure and go write a banger in response? I mean, honestly, that is an enormous amount of pressure, and I really respect all these guys who do it. So that's why I was very interested in Drake's album. And I am the ultimate authority on hip hop, so I feel really qualified to render this opinion. I mean, nobody knows more about the experience of the streets than I do. But I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't meant for pop culture. I didn't find it to be amazing. However, I do think that it does something really positive for Drake's public image that he went ahead and dropped it, even though I don't think anyone would say that this is a real masterpiece of an album. Actually, I did see a few people saying that, but they're in the minority and they seem to be either bots or Drake superfans. But it's solid. I mean, it's solid for the genre that it is. It's a little more R&B than straight hip hop, and that might be it too, because R&B isn't as much to my taste. But he dropped it. He put it out there. And what's interesting is he now changed the conversation, because there isn't a lot of very over-the-top vocal rap beef stuff. So now he's changed the conversation to just, are these bangers? Do we like what Drake is putting out there? Do we like this album? He changed the whole conversation by just dropping it. And it's a solid album. It might not be a masterpiece, but it's solid. And I think that's such a lesson to all of us, whether you're putting stuff out there publicly or not. Yes, people will judge you, but they will also forget surprisingly quickly. I'm so surprised with all the hip hop accounts I follow. I am surprised by how quickly this conversation has changed. And we're not even, when I was looking at it, we're like 4 days out from the Super Bowl. And I wouldn't say people have forgotten about it. I mean, no one will ever forget what Kendrick did to him. But people are already losing their energy for celebrating Kendrick's just devastating victory over Drake. They're already losing their energy for it. And so, in any area of life where you feel judged, you feel like you embarrassed yourself, that someone got the best of you, whatever, just don't forget. People forget, and they forget really quickly if you change the conversation. If you keep creating, keep putting stuff out there, whatever that is for you, keep doing your thing and just kind of minding your own business and putting out there whatever you feel like putting out there, people will forget whatever it was they were judging you for, or at least lose their energy for it very, very quickly. And before we get into what Ellen did that was so iconic, this is a slight tangent, but worth saying, and I've meant to say it for a while. So on Drake's album, there is a song called Brian Steele. Now, regular listeners of this podcast, does that name ring a bell? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know?
Yeah, that was the attorney for...
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes! Okay.
One for me.
I've trained you guys well. Okay. Brian Steele was Young Thug's attorney. And this past summer, if you search my podcast for rap beef, you can find all the rap beef episodes. No one followed the Young Thug trial more closely than I did. And the summary of that is just, it was such a wild ride. You should really listen to those episodes. But Thug and Steele went through a lot. I will give you just one example, but there are many like this. There was an unfair judge that he was so unfair, and everyone agreed on this, that he got removed from the bench. It was really bad. He was so obviously out to get Thug. And at one point, Brian Steele called the judge on something, and he was within his right to do that. And the judge got mad at him and threatened to send him to jail if Brian didn't reveal some information that Brian did not want to reveal. And I think legally he did not. He was in the right to be like, I don't have to tell you that. And the judge was like, okay, you're going to jail. And Brian Steele was like, well, you can send me to jail, but I'm not betraying my client. And then he asked if he could be put in the same cell as Thug so that they could work on the case together. And the hashtag had been Free Thug. And then it was Free Thug and Brian, which was it's so magical and amazing. So there were all these moments of, they would play one of Thug's songs in court. The prosecution would play songs to try to, incriminate Thug based on his lyrics. And Brian Steele said, deadpan, dead serious. He says, Thug stands for truly humbled under God. That's why he chose that name. Okay. So, and there were moments, there was this very sweet moment where they were playing one of Thug's songs in court, and he and Brian looked at each other, and Brian was like, that's a good song. And they fist bumped. Okay. So think about this. Now that Thug is free, Brian freed him. Think about this. Are they really going to keep hanging out? I'm very concerned about this. So this tells you where my issues are. And this actually, because this podcast is a seamless tapestry where every subject connects to the other in these miraculous ways that are guided by God. God's the executive producer of this podcast. This kind of connects to the main topic of some very specific issues I have, but it honestly stresses me out to think of just the pain that I would feel if I were Brian Steele and or Thug. It's kind of this like star-crossed lovers, not that they were lovers, but it's like they come from two different worlds. Brian Steele is this rich, wealthy white man who's a lawyer in Atlanta, and Thug is, despite what they said in the trial, I think Thug might really be involved in gang activity. I think that maybe that wasn't just for show. And I just don't know if it's realistic that they'll keep hanging out. And when I think about just that deep friendship that they shared, and will it be able to continue, or will it just be like they shared this incredible thing together? They went through a sort of battle together, and now what? They just don't talk anymore. So if that tugs at your heartstrings, then you and I have the same issues. We have some very specific abandonment issues, because honestly, it really bothers me to think about it. So if anyone ever hears that Brian Steele and Young Thug keep hanging out, please let me know. Please let me know. Oh, and Brian Steele has said he really enjoyed Drake's song called Brian Steele. So that's good. That was definitely a positive part of that album. Okay. Ellen Skrmetti did the most iconic thing that other than Kendrick Lamar in the Super Bowl I've ever seen anyone do. Okay. So I told you, she was at Cap City. She had a basically sold out show. There were like 4 seats available. Let's say it was sold out. It was basically sold out. So she has a sold out show at Cap City Comedy Club in Austin. And I went into her green room before the show, and we'd immediately hit it off. Great conversation. Aren't those great moments in life when you meet someone in person who you've known a little bit online, and it's just, you're just two peas in a pod. You know, we were Thug and Brian Steele. I mean, just, I don't know which one. We're both these Southern white ladies. Like, I don't know which one of us would be, how that would fit. But what I'm saying is we had a great rapport, okay? We had a great rapport. And we were just talking and talking. And then her opener went on stage. And we just kept talking and talking. And it was so much, you know, I mean, again, and this will go into the main topic. I got very psyched out by, she was just making passing comments about some business moves she made. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I wouldn't have the problems that I have if I had done that. Oh, you asked that. You asked that question. Okay. I didn't know we could do that. So I'm sitting there just marveling at her business acumen. And she was fully present, guys. She was fully present in that conversation and just, reflecting, pausing, elaborating on interesting things I asked her about. I was the only one who seemed concerned that the show had started and her one opener was on stage. And so I didn't want to be rude, but I kept looking at the clock like, do you need to do anything before you go on stage? Do you need to review any notes or anything? And she was like, oh no, I just kind of go out there and roll with it. And again, I was like, I suck. I mean, I don't, before shows, I don't spend a ton of time looking over stuff, but a little bit, I might want to get a couple things in my mind. And so the opener's now really been on stage for a while. And she had mentioned a couple times that she did need to go to the bathroom before she went on stage. And because you're up there for an hour, you're up there for a full hour. And so I was like, okay, well, this sounds like a closer to me with what we're hearing. I mean, he's raising his voice. The audience is rolling. Probably a closer, if I had to guess. And she's just relaxed and chatting. And so then we hear the opener say, are you guys ready? No, that's not good enough. Make it loud. Make it louder for your, so he's getting the crowd wound up. And so Ellen and I stand up. We'd been sitting on the green room couch. And I said, well, Ellen, I guess you're not getting that bathroom break. You're gonna, all right, just hold it. That's good. She was like, hey, would you run out there and tell them that I need a minute?
What?
She did that. I was like, who's them? The sold out crowd that's out there?
You mean all of them?
The hundreds upon hundreds of people who are chanting your name and screaming, and the opener, and then let's not forget that my face is deformed and like in person stuff. I'm not wearing this mask thing. And I don't have stage fright in any way, but I was like, well, my face, I feel like you have to explain why I'm, like the troll coming out from under a bridge and looking weird. And she just, and I need you to understand, she was as calm as if we were sipping tea on a Birmingham, Alabama front porch, just, kind of looking at the clouds, like, I think this and that about life. Like, yeah, that's just, they're like, her cortisol levels were not raised in any way. She was the most relaxed person I'd ever seen. And she just, no rush. See, that's where I'd be rushing around like, oh no,
Same.
No, just she didn't even rush what she said. She said, I need a minute to go to the bathroom. Would you just tell them I need a minute?
That sounds
so what? Okay, so now you have to understand. All right, the green room door, and luckily this is my home club. I do know where this one is. I can get on and off this stage. It's the only one. The green room door opens directly onto the stage. In this case, there's no curtain or anything that I could be like the disembodied voice from behind the curtain, like caw, like there's no secret handshake I can give from behind the curtain. I have to walk on stage. And so you guys have to understand. I mean, I didn't really have much makeup on or any. I was kind of slumming it because I'd had a busy day. I'm not on the show. I was just there to say hi to her. I'm looking at my outfit. I was like, well, I didn't think I was walking on a stage. Let's go. Let's do it. LFG, you know. And she's also a good Christian woman, so it's let's have faith in God is what that stands for. So the opener, you have to understand, the opener has everyone screaming and clapping, and they're like, Ellen, and he's like, all right, you guys have made it nice and loud. All right, everybody, go crazy for Ellen Skrmetti. And then boom, 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 that Salt and Peppa's Push It, which is the perfect walk-on song. I might need to borrow that as a walk-on song. Push It starts. The crowd is screaming, and I walk out. I walk out. And keep in mind, my face is just like looking insane. And it's just instinct. I smile at them. So now they're like, what is this, a Make-A-Wish? Like, what is going on? Why is she here? And then it occurred to me, once I was on the stage, I was like, all right, so she needs, like, she's not in a hurry, guys. I mean, she's not running out here any second. So I was like, well, should I do a few minutes? I mean, because I don't know. Sometimes the openers don't have that much more material. And that is something I do wish I had thought of before I was on stage. I was like, is the action item here for me to do 5 minutes of comedy or just deliver the message? When I saw the way the crowd was looking at me, I decided the opener really had this, and I would go ahead and get off this stage really as soon as I could. There was a lot of confusion. And on so many levels, like, who is this? And why does she look like that? She's trying to smile at us, but it's a real Quasimodo vibe situation here. So I took the opener aside. And oh, by the way, while we were on stage, I realized I actually know this guy. But because I have face blindness, I didn't recognize him in the green room. And I was like, oh my God, oh wow, he thinks I'm so rude now. So that's another layer of things that were happening with hundreds of people who had very suddenly stopped screaming Ellen's name and were now just confused. And so I whispered to the opener, I said, she's in the bathroom. She needs a minute. And so this has never happened to any of us. So he was like, yeah, okay. So yeah, well, I was born here in Austin, just kind of, went to high school here. I mean, he just goes into his biography to just, kind of go back into comedy. And I go back in the green room, and Ellen is, she checked her makeup and then just kind of made sure her lipstick, you don't want any, just make sure the lipstick is on right, and just kind of checked her hair in the mirror. And then at her leisure, when she was ready, she walked on stage. And that's also because now the opener couldn't introduce her the same way because he didn't know. It was like a game show. Like, how long can you do comedy before, with no specific deadline. And so she just walked on stage, surprised him. Surprise, it's me, I'm here. And then the crowd goes wild. He thought it was great. Obviously, I thought it was amazing. And then I went back to just sit with the audience, and she just destroyed. She did so well. At one point, I had to go to the bathroom, and I heard these two women run in. They didn't know each other, but they were both like, she is so funny. It's killing me that I have to go to the bathroom. I hate it that I'm missing this show. I mean, she just destroyed. She just destroyed for an hour. And but it all started with her deciding that she needed a few minutes. And just everyone is just gonna, like, she was in no way stressed about it, and she was not in a hurry. We have talked a lot on this podcast and on the Village Hustle Patreon. That's the Patreon level where I'm like your life coach after 3 mimosas. About how important it is not to rush. And that it was such an amazing example of the confidence it takes to just know that, what that confidence I think comes from is like, you just know that you are going to deliver good things. And so everyone can wait because it's definitely going to pay off. And this is, again, seamless, hit the seamless tapestry sound effect. I think some of my issues that have come up in journal speak are, I think I have a lot of issues with feeling like what I do is not going to be good enough. Could it be because like when I would get 98s in school, my parents would tell me that if I had tried harder, I could have gotten a better grade. My mom listens to this podcast, so no, categorically, that did not.
That's a nope.
Nope. That I think that was great, and I'm glad that I never once achieved a grade that ever made me feel like I finally did it. You know, I don't even know where that thought came from. So I definitely walk around feeling like whatever I do is probably going to make people mad and they're going to think it sucks. And so I should be really kind of subservient. I should be, yes, that I meant to tell you guys. Nicole Sachs has been talking about how we've heard of the fight or flight response. And she pointed out something so interesting. Hit the make sure you're listening sound effect. If you're driving and you're zoning out, which nobody should do, you guys should be pen and paper taking notes on everything in this podcast. On the off chance that you were zoning out, listen to this because it's really interesting. When your body senses danger and is in flight, fight or flight. So we talk about that fight meaning you might get aggressive or something, or flight that you run away. Nicole Sachs has pointed out that there's also freezing can be a response where you just completely freeze up. Those of us who make dissociation an Olympic sport, we're good at freezing. But another kind of trauma, your body senses danger response is fawning. That has been very instructive to me. And if you are a people pleaser, you should Google trauma response fawning, because I just always walk around with this sense that people are not going to be happy with whatever I am about to do. And so I had better be like, oh, yes, oh, God, you're great. I'm great. Everything's great. Is everything great? Yes, wonderful. And so I just wouldn't. It's weird. Like, I know that my set, like the hour of comedy that I do is really good. I mean, objectively, it does well in Austin with a bunch of 25-year-olds who don't know who I am. I mean, I think objectively I have shown it's good. It's high quality, but I just still have this baseline feeling of like, it's going to be the 98 that could have been 100. It's not. And so I can't tell everyone to wait while I go to the bathroom. Like, what? But Ellen just has this confidence that like, it's all going to be fine and people will be happy with her. And they were. I mean, it actually was a wonderful way to start a show. I might make stuff up and do that because it was so iconic and it was such a power move. And so I think my takeaway on that is just, if you find that you're rushing around all the time, and if you would like never, ever, 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 ever do what she did, you might have a little bit of a fawning danger response. And again, I didn't know that fawning was up there with fight and flight and freeze, that fawning is one of them. And you might want to look into that, because that was actually really instructive to me to realize that there's probably some journal speak to be done there, and my body is sensing danger. And I'm just like, I could probably work out some of my issues there next time I find that I am so fawning that I rush myself when I really don't need to. That feeling, rush. I got to be there. I got to leave right now. Got to rush. You might want to do some digging on that, because it is really interesting to see the power of people who don't feel rushed, and to see the self-possession and the confidence that it takes to be a person who refuses to rush. It could also be that she's from Alabama. I mean, that's not like, it's not like she grew up in Midtown Manhattan. I mean, there could be a little bit of a cultural thing there too. And that's so perfectly seamless tapestry. It so perfectly goes into the main topic. And before I get to that, I want to tell you the Village Hustle Patreon. That's the higher level Patreon. Episode 78. It just came out on Monday. I laid out this new meal planning system where I use 2 different apps for meal planning. It saves me so much time and mental energy. It's honestly insane. I've been using it for 4 months. It really helps me with the Sunday scaries to just not be so stressed out on Sundays, because this meal planning system makes creating the store list and managing recipes and all that so easy. It's made meal planning so easy. So check that out. That is episode 78, patreon.com/IsisGen. Okay, so let us review. Let us play a little bit of that audio that I sent Leah after Ellen's show, just so you can have it fresh in your mind, the state that I was in after seeing that.
Like, as soon as she walks on stage, you know her accent, you know this person. Like, oh yeah, Baptist background for sure, yep. Mississippi, Alabama, yep, that's where she's from. Yeah, it's like you just know everything about her. I walk on stage, who the hell am I? Nobody knows. What's she doing here? She's talking about being from Texas. She does not seem like she's from Texas. She has all these kids. She doesn't seem like somebody who would have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Aren't we all? Like, that can totally relate. It's also relatable. No, nobody gives a about my comedy, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't care about my comedy. After seeing Ellen, I don't care about my comedy.
Okay, now, here's where everyone needs a best friend who is a life coach, because here is what Leah said in response. This is actually something that she said to me previously about a different meltdown, but I want you to really, really sit with this, and it's good advice. Replay this one for yourself. Pretend that Leah is your best friend anytime you need it.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is like, if you're going to make up stories, make up the ones that make you a winner. You're making up stories where you're the loser. That's not iconic, Jen. That's not the Jenergy we need. It's not you. It's all your insecurities talking so that you will ultimately just be right.
Wasn't that about that what she said at the very end, that psychologically it's about your mind wants to make you, quote unquote, a loser in your own fantasy, which is so funny. She's like, how are you going to be a loser in your own fantasy, But she's like, but that's okay. So what a lot of people don't know about her, she doesn't mention this enough. Everyone knows her as she was on America's Next Top Model, but she has a master's in either psychology, psychiatry, like neuropsych, something like that. She is actually pretty highly trained in psychology. Some of the internship stuff she did was really high level and crazy and insane. And so she has great psychological insights. And that thing she said at the end, very end, she says, your mind wants to be right. Because that gives us a sense of safety. And that is why sometimes, very often for some of us, when we fall into the comparison game, and let's face it, the comparison game is, as Leah says, nothing more than making yourself a loser in your own fantasies. The reason we do it is because it is familiar. And your mind will choose familiarity over really anything, because that is a known quantity. And by the way, Leah talks about all this stuff on her podcast, the Leah Darrow podcast. It's brand new. Look that up. It's also on YouTube, but it's on all the podcast apps. And she has a course. She did not ask me to plug this. I do not have an affiliate code. I'm just saying this because I'm her friend and it's good. She has a course on her website, leahdarrow.com, called Power Made Perfect. And it's about leveling up your life, but from, she's like from a, religious perspective, but not, it's a good balance. It's not like overly religious, but you're not going to have to hear anything about the universe, which is so refreshing, So it's like from a, just we're walking with Jesus here in the Power Made Perfect thing. It's really good. And if you're like, wow, I wish that she could help me level up, well, you got it. Go to her website, Power Made Perfect, and follow her podcast. Oh, and you guys might know her. Some of you know her as she's the one who had the baby who was born weighing 1 pound just about a year ago. His birthday is coming up. Wow. And he weighed 1 pound. He was born at 22 weeks. And he is doing amazing. I see him in her messages all the time. He's like a regular little baby. Like, it's crazy.
That's so
crazy. So yeah, so that's Leah. But yeah, that was such a wake-up call to me as I was laying out my limiting beliefs, which again, it's very powerful to do that, especially when you know that you're not trying to solidify these things as things that you believe, but you're just trying to codify, whether it's in writing or verbally, what are the thoughts that are rolling around in my mind that I have not exactly articulated exactly what they're saying. And you know what's interesting? Our body's always trying to keep us safe. I think the reason our body kind of prefers that we not articulate them is because we'll see that they're nonsense. We'll see that they're stupid. Like when you actually say it, it's like, okay, well, that actually sounds kind of dumb. You know, now that I say it, it is actually, that's a pretty stupid thing to think. It reminds me of, in a previous episode, we talked about the line, the monsters turned out to be just trees. It's hard to say what my favorite Taylor Swift line is, but that's one of them. One of my comedy friends has a tattoo that says the monsters turned out to be just trees. And that's such a great analogy of, I think all of us when we were a kid thought we saw a monster in the room. And then you flip on the lights and it turns out it's a hat rack or, all the clothes that you didn't put away that were, piled up on your chair or something. And when you actually put into words, again, you can do it by talking out loud to a friend, talking out loud into Notes app and recording it, or writing on paper. When you actually put into words what your limiting beliefs are telling you when you're in a comparison game spiral, they will very often start to feel a little silly, and you will have the same reaction as when you thought there was a monster in your room and someone turned on the light. Like, oh, that's a hat rack. Okay, that's a little embarrassing that I was screaming my head off about the horrible monster in my room when it was a hat rack. It was a hat rack. And I had that hat rack moment so I continued in that message that you heard from Leah. And one of the things that I was on about is I was like, I'll never make it to that next level. Like I'll never be able to make the comedy millions. You know why, Leah? Because I don't have a Southern accent. You can't, and you don't understand. This was in my head as a truth. Like we established, the grass is green. One of the Valium episodes, I was like, the grass is blue, the sky is green. The grass is green, the sky is blue. And you just can't make it in comedy unless you have a Southern accent. And I had not articulated it. It was a feeling that felt very true, and it was weighing me down, and it was depressing me. And because Leah and I have this system where we lay out our limiting beliefs back and forth, I was like, you know what? I'm going to hit her with the truth. I'm going to hit her with the truth, and she's going to feel so sorry for me. And maybe she can help me figure out an exit strategy from this horrible mistake of a career. And then I started talking, and I went on this yelling rant about how it is impossible to make it in comedy if you don't have a Southern accent. And I actually couldn't finish. I was like, this is actually stupider than I thought it would be. This is one of the dumber limiting beliefs I have ever had. It's so stupid. And I did try to revive it because I was like, no, okay. You have to have some kind of accent. Like David Nihil, he has an Irish accent. Andrew Schultz, he has that Bronx or Brooklyn or whatever, outer boroughs of Manhattan accent. And then I listed all these, this guy has like an urban accent. And so I was like, yeah, I have kind of a general American way of speaking, and so I can't be successful. And then it was just like, this is insane. I'm even by my own standards, I'm being insane. But I wouldn't have realized how insane that thought was until I put it into words. Now, here's where we go to the next level with this. Did you think that was the main insight? No. This podcast, we cannot figure out how it's free. Hit the "how is this podcast free" sound effect. Because I'm about to hit you with the next level insight that was really keyed off of what Leah said about your brain just wants to be right. So when you start writing or talking out your limiting beliefs and articulate them in as much detail as you can, really feel what's true in there and put it into words in as much detail as you can, all of the quote unquote truths that are rolling around in your mind. What's interesting is I bet you anything that if you speak generically about them, meaning you're not tying them to one specific situation going on right now, it will really sound very familiar to whatever was jacked up in your childhood. So essentially what I was saying, these monsters that turned out to be just trees, the monster that turned out to be the hat rack when we flipped on the lights, this wasn't really about my comedy career. This wasn't really about me truly believing that you can't succeed if you don't have a regional accent. What I shouldn't admit this. This is so stupid. No, Caitlin, you don't understand how true I thought that was. One of the things, by the way, I love about my new manager is because I've tried to tell him my tortured theories. Like I didn't try that one on him, but I was like, it was something. I was like, I don't think I sell well in this one region because I'm tall, and those people, they have a history of. And he was like, just stop, just stop. What are you saying? I've come to really appreciate people who call me on this. So what I was essentially saying with my theory that felt so real is that there is something inherent about me that I cannot change, or I really couldn't change because I'm bad at accents. Honestly, I'd think about it. Hey, y'all, this is the Jen Fulwiler Show rebrand. I'm not good at accents. So I'd be happy to be fake to make money, but I just wouldn't be good at it. So what I was saying with those limiting beliefs, when you strip away the specifics, is that there is something inherent about me that will never allow me to fit in with a group of people, to be one of a group of people, in this case, millionaire comedians. And there's something inherent about me that bars me from being part of this group, and I can't change it. And in fact, I should quit trying to reach whatever level I'm trying to reach, because it's just going to lead me to more pain. And so I should quit. Now, does that sound like someone who maybe was bullied quite severely in their childhood? Yes, it does. It's very similar. Like, you guys know my background, that we moved so much, and it was to all these different regions. I tried to memorize our moves so I could lay it out to you. It was like Atlanta, Tucson, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Houston, back to West Virginia, Bismarck, North Dakota, Phoenix. There's a move. Yeah. You go from Bismarck, North Dakota to Phoenix, Arizona, to Dallas, like all these different places. Okay. So then to Denver, then whatever, it goes on. So I was not moving just like a couple houses down. I was moving to very different regions of the country. This was before the internet, so there wasn't a lot of knowledge about what people were like. We've established, I think I had some real undiagnosed neurodivergent tendencies. I am an only child, so I did not have siblings to help me meet people. My dad was gone off at different jobs that he worked for a very large percentage of my childhood. And so it was very hard for me to figure out how to break in to social groups, how to make friends. You guys were laughing the other day. I got a bunch of comments from people. A couple podcast episodes ago, I was talking about when I read the book Dune, I was interested in the concept of walking arrhythmically, because I just thought that's an interesting challenge. What if I lived on a desert planet where I'd get eaten by a giant worm if I walked in a rhythmic fashion? Because in the book, they had to, do like step, 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 so that the worms wouldn't realize that they were human and eat them. And I tried doing that, and I was also goth. And so I was step, 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 arrhythmically walking around, like staring at my feet to try to see if I was doing it and if I would get eaten by the worms, when I was 15 and goth. So it's, I wouldn't say I fit in super well. This was when we lived in Georgetown, Texas, a rural town where everyone was a good Bible-believing Christian. I was also an atheist. Everyone wore, the Wrangler jeans. They drove pickup trucks. they were very, kind of upstanding people. They wore cowboy hats, very country Christian, good Baptist Bible believing people. And so, the goth kid who's walking arrhythmically and staring at her feet, like it wasn't an issue in my life that I had too many friends. It was like, what am I going to do with all these friends? And then in some other cities, I was bullied like really severely. It was like stuff out of a Netflix documentary. It was pretty bad. So that taught me some lessons early on in life. And one of them was like, you have an inherent flaw. You have a fatal flaw that is going to keep you from fitting in with whatever group of people it is that you want to fit in with. And my mind, and spoiler alert, yours does this too, my mind wants to keep playing out that scenario because it feels safe, because it's something we can control. It's like, thank goodness I almost tried to be successful and make more money as a comedian. I'm so glad we got out of that, because at least we knew how that was going to end, and just really glad that we got done with that. And now we can go lock ourselves in our room and stare at a wall and just be safe. It does feel safe when things are playing out in a way that your brain expects. There's someone I knew for many years who had the idea that, from just some things that happened to them, that when it seems like you have a good opportunity, it won't work out, especially financially. Just, it might seem like you're getting ahead financially, but every time the man is going to screw you over and you're going to end up being poor. And I saw someone live in this cycle for many years, and looking back, it was like, yeah, I think you kind of wanted that to be true because you had some tough situations around that in your earlier years. And so your brain was like, let's stay in this safe system that we know. Let's stay in safety, because things that are predictable are safe. Things that are predictable are safe. And so our brain almost wants to play out these cycles of danger because it's so worried that we'll get back into that one situation. And at least if we can control it, it can keep us out of danger. And so this has been so instructive to me. Every time I'm on a limiting belief fest, which is like every hour, when I can find the time, what I do is I write my limiting beliefs in, first I just write the specifics. It's about this specific situation. For example, this one person did not return my text. Well, I know what that means. I know exactly what that means. I have embarrassed myself in front of them. They never want to speak to me again. They are embarrassed to be associated with me. They are mad at me. So I start with the specific situation, but then I take a step back and say, what are the basic movements of this? What are the things that I am believing about myself and the consequences of my actions, generally speaking? And every time you start to realize a lifelong pattern that started in your childhood. And once you recognize that, then you can do some therapy, either getting a therapist or doing journal speak about it or whatever. There are a lot of ways to resolve it when you realize what it is. But it was only through this process of laying out my limiting beliefs and then speaking of them in generic terms where I was like, okay, I have a really serious issue with feeling like I have a fatal flaw that means that I will not be able to fit in with whatever group of people I want to fit in with. And by the way, to see how stupid this is, I'm from the Catholic ghetto. I do have people. And yes, I didn't encounter you guys until, I was well into adulthood. But I have as much of a tribe as anyone, And yes, one of the limiting beliefs I was saying is, well, but we in the Catholic ghetto, we're weird. That's not relatable to a mainstream perspective, but being Catholic is. And in fact, I've done a bunch of shows in Austin where if the crowd is a little lukewarm, I can often turn them around by talking about being Catholic. And these are a bunch of atheists. They're all Wiccans. Like, they're ayahuasca shamans, like, in the audience. They couldn't care less about being a faithful Catholic, but they do know what Catholicism is. I mean, they get that concept, and it usually gets a pretty big laugh when I go into material about it. So it was just the ultimate hat rack monster moment when I was talking about, I was like, Ellen Skrmetti, she's got a Southern accent and she has a Baptist background, and all of these people were laughing at those references, and I don't have anything like that. And Leah was like, what crack rock are you smoking this time? You're the queen of the Catholic ghetto. What are you talking about? Like, of course you have that. And I was like, oh yeah, I do. I have a pretty good tribe. I mean, like you guys, like, you make your own merch when you show. I mean, can you imagine my openers in all these cities? I've been using local openers, and can you imagine that, like, they see you guys lining up wearing T-shirts with like phrases from my podcast that you have made. Like, you've made these T-shirts with awesome phrases from this podcast. Like, you're dressed up, you bring jingle bells like from the podcast. It would be funny, and I could see myself doing this if, while, like, with you guys in the background, like, if we can see you guys out of the one-way window from the green room, and I'm like, yeah, it's just, I mean, I just don't have like a tribe, because, like, I'm not understood by anyone, and that's really, I'll never fit in anywhere, because I'm just, and they're like, what? This line is going around the block. Like, people like, what are you talking about? So that is true insanity. It's true insanity that I would get that in my head, but I lay that out because, as I always say, if you are tracking with this podcast, especially if you're listening to the very end, I got some news for you. You're crazy too. So if with all of the endless support that you guys have shown me, and what an incredible tribe we have, if I can get it in my head that I will never fit in with anyone anywhere because I don't have a Southern accent, then yeah, you guys might have a few things that are that crazy too. So you need to start, have a limiting belief vent session, rewrite those limiting beliefs in just generic terms, and then you'll know what feelings you need to work out through journal speak, through therapy, or whatever, that you need to get those out at the root. Otherwise, these patterns will keep repeating themselves, because ultimately your brain does want what's familiar, even if it's a dumpster fire. All right, that is it for this fine episode. Check out the replay of the Patreon Live that we are just about to do here in a few minutes. Patreon.com/thisisjen. Oh, tour cities. I forgot to tell you, I'm on tour, a bunch of cities. I knew I forgot something. We will be back with you next week. Get your tour tickets, jfcomedytour.com. See you next Wednesday.